Crash Course Humanities, and I'm Mary Faith Jones. And today, we're going to be talking about ancient civilizations, more specifically, the Oberon civilization. The Oberonians were a civilization that lived in a desolate, mountainous area, like a mountain valley, because it was mountains and then a valley, and they lived in the valley. And their water source was from the water that melted from the ice caps on the mountains. And basically their source of food was like fish and any vegetation that grew inside the environment. They would also get rain, a lot of rain. So it was a very wet, moist environment. And yes, I use the word moist. It's not a fun word. And so they were a chiefdom civilization. So they had one chief, and he led everyone. He made the rules and regulations, and it was basically passed down from generation to generation. So there's only like one chiefdom family, and hopefully no one from that, not the whole family dies. So there's always one remaining person who survives and becomes the new chief. Council that he worked with that would give him like advice for stuff would be the other elders of society. So the oldest person from each family, whether male or female, would come and advise him with any big ideas like, hey, maybe we should move over the mountains. But of course that never happened. So they didn't advise him well for that. That also leads into their religious beliefs, because the chief was also their religious leader and everything that they believed. And they were a polytheistic civilization, so they actually worshipped stars. And each star, like the biggest stars that they would see, they would name them, and they believed that the star god would provide for their food and give them enough water to survive and everything that they needed in life to live and prosper. They also had a main animal that they worshipped, and it happened to be the caribou. Yes, in relation to a reindeer or a deer in general. They believed that the caribou gave them the other foods, so they would not eat the caribou. They would eat like predators of the caribou, things that wanted to eat the caribou because they believed that the caribou brought them the food that they wanted, except for fish, because it was very readily available. So anything else that would potentially hunt the caribou, they hunted. So they highly exhausted the caribou. So their nicknames, instead of like calling the Oberonians, they would also be called like the caribou people, because they worshipped caribou. I really wish I had brought my sweater that said, oh dear, oh dear.
In the beginning of the cosmos, the sun god and moon god lived in harmony. Both of the gods wanted to claim a certain planet, Earth, only for themselves. They decided to compromise, and in taking the planet, one of the gods controlled the water, and the other controlled the land. However, neither of them were totally satisfied with just that. Tension slowly built up to hatred, and to decide who could claim the rights to the Earth and its resources, they waged a war against one another. Each god created an army of anthropomorphic beings to fight for their side. The war and the fighting was intense, and the earth felt the wrath of it. Thunderstorms, heavy snow, and freezing blizzards would take place and drive the earth into an ice age. In time, the pressure was too much for the earth itself to handle, and mountains jolted up out of the ground, surrounding the belligerent men. They realized for themselves that all of their fighting was in vain, and that no one could ever truly win. The men who fought for the gods came to peaceful agreements with each other, deciding that they were special and different from the hate-filled gods. Eventually, a society emerged in the mountains, and humans would prosper despite the Ice Age. The gods noticed how the humans were able to put aside their differences in belief for peace, and they were motivated to stop fighting once and for all and create peace. This propelled the Earth's environment to take sudden changes, including the departure of the Ice Age. Feeling confident in their creation, the moon god and sun god left the earth to humans, giving them the freedom that we still have today. Every day, the moon god and sun god continue to check on the peoples of the planet, Earth, giving them day and night, dusk and dawn, and light and dark in a continuous routine motion.
Within the civilization of Oberon, there were many specific duties that each family in the civilization had to perform. This meant that each family had a different job. So one family was the chief's family, so all they did was learn from the chief, and all the children would gather all the information that they could from their father or mother, depending upon which one was from the line. And yes, a female could be the chief. They would gather all the information they could from him, so in years past, when their parent passes, they can be able to be chief for them. Other jobs included the hunting for food, and that job would be for another one specific family that would go out and teach their kids how to hunt, and they would hunt together as a family. And then when someone passed, the patriarch or matriarch, whoever was highest in the civilization in their family, would then be the leader of like the hunting group or the fishing group, because there was also a family who was specific for fishing outside of hunting. There was also an agricultural family who they would go out and look for the vegetation and gather whatever vegetation they could. They didn't really have the resources to actually harvest any vegetation, so they would just use natural vegetation that came yearly. Outside of that, outside of the food section, there was the family that would do the clothing. They would create, they would use whatever food skin they had, and they would turn it into the clothing that they needed for the whole village to make sure that everyone was warm and cozy or not sweating their butts off. And they would be the ones to make the coverings for the houses, and they would use that to their ability for the very, very special jobs, because a majority of these jobs in their civilization, your social class was based upon what job you had, and its importance to the civilization. Well, majority of them were still really important, so there was pretty much solid equality inside the civilization of Oberon. The only higher hierarchies within the families were the chiefdom's family, the chief's family, and the family that had the cave jars, because that was one of their big things. Whenever a story was told or something big happened, they would have one specific family go in and draw inside the cave, so they would have those special artifacts. They were also the ones that wrote down all of their stories, so that's how we have their creation story today. And for them to be able to do that, the civilization was able to make their own writing utensils and be able to use them to draw, and they made their own ink out of berries, most likely. We don't have any actual proof of that. And then for hunting and fishing, they would use sticks and sharp rocks to make their spears to be able to stab and kill whatever they need to find their food.
So since we've covered everything that happened back then, let's talk about what happened after the fall of the civilization and what we found today in our day and age. I'm going to sit for this one. It's easier. Since the fall of their civilization, archaeologists have found many artifacts that prove basically everything we've taught you today, which helps us a lot because proof, it works. Since the fall of the Oberon civilization thousands of years ago, many archaeologists have found a lot of artifacts that prove the existence essence of the civilization, which is good for us because it backs up what we've told you, so you know it's true. As mentioned earlier, cave drawings was a big part of their civilization to tell stories and use it to preserve their history. And here today we have a picture of one of the cave drawings, and it's a depiction of their creation story. Here you can see the sun and moon god, and the people being created, and the animals, and the fall, basically, of what happened in their creation story. Also, along with their mini drawings, they have also found proof of their own written holy writ that basically have all of their written beliefs down. Basically, this would have been what the chiefs used to prove what they believe. It has what you should do to communicate with elders and how basically their civilization was ruled. In the civilization, because of different people that did the jobs, for the families that had the job of making the clothing for the people and protective coverings and stuff like that, they would also like to be decorative. So, of course, in their civilization, they had many types of jewelry. Majority of the time, they would use like naturally found metals, and with their tools that they had, they would shape them and put them on, and then they would use some sort of branch or vegetation to make the part that would go around your neck, which makes it 500 times easier to wear, as they have a necklace now. So this is the last thing that archaeologists have found. It is a chief's religious headdress of what they would wear to like religious ceremonies and stuff like that. And we know that because it has antlers, and from the very beginning that caribou were highly celebrated within their society and culture. So it has antlers. And I'm going to put it on because it makes me feel like I am a chief of the society too. Now that we've basically explained everything about the lost civilization of the Oberonians, tune in next time for...
Next time on Dragon Ball Z.